So it seems like every parent's worst nightmare is hearing the words, "I want to be a musician when I grow up." And which is kind of funny because like a lot of parents put their kids in music classes because it's like good for your brain and stuff, but then it's like, oh, you want to make it a career? Oh no, it's backfired. And you could also substitute like musician with like artist, or like I want to major in psychology or something like that. And honestly, a parent would be kind of right to be a little bit concerned about this. You know, my parents were thankfully really accepting and helpful with this. My dad's a freelance artist, so he kind of knows the struggle, and I've kind of like seen how to navigate that from a sort of similar perspective. But I remember when I started playing guitar when I was 13 years old, it was almost immediately that I was like, I want to do this as a career. I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like basically a month after I started playing guitar, I was like, nothing brings me this satisfaction like playing guitar and making music. And then it was like, how do I do that? And when I got to high school and it was time to like apply for college and all that stuff, I was presented with really three options because those were like the main majors in college that I can relate to. It was performer, being jazz, performer being classical, and then educator, like a teacher. And as I grow up and as I like navigate this music industry more and like make money making music and doing this as a career, the more I realize that there's so many more options than just performing or teaching. So I want to go into a lot of that stuff and basically give you a lot of options. Before we jump into that, just want to really quickly plug my debut album. It's called Rest Unrest. We got t-shirts, we got CDs, and if you're watching this on the day it comes out, hopefully the album comes out this Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. But if you're in the future, the album's already out. Go check out the links if you want to hear them. This is actually the background music playing behind this video. These are the songs from the album. And before we dive into this, I just want to give a quick disclaimer and say that I'm not like a music career professional or anything like that. I don't know a lot about all these careers and I can't fully speak to all of them from personal experiences. But the idea behind this video is that I'm just going to give you all the options that I can think of at the moment. And if anything resonates with you, you can go research that more and find other videos and find people talking more specifically about these things. And also in reality, as a musician or as any creative person, your revenue is going to come from multiple different things. You're probably not going to have just like one job. It's sort of just part of the thing and it's something we have to deal with. And in one sense, you know, it's really kind of cool because we're able to do a lot of things, wear different hats, and every day is a different thing. But it comes with its own challenges. And also, most of these don't need a degree if you ask me or a lot of other YouTubers, but if you ask the institutions, you might need a degree. I don't know. I'm not going to jump too into that, but yeah, degrees are another conversation for another day. So I'm going to break this video down into 5 parts. We're going to be talking about performers, we're going to be talking about educators, then composers, recording/producers and stuff like that. And then we're going to be talking about the rogue agent, which is social media person. And the timestamps for all of those are right here if you want to jump to any of them in particular, and they're also in the description. So let's jump right into performer. So really, as a performer, I kind of divide this into 2 separate tracks. For me, it's the leader track and the sideman track. I'm familiar with both of these roles, so I can definitely speak to that, but let's start off with the leader track. So with the leader, basically you're creating an experience, you're creating your own music. Usually this means writing your own music, but if we look at Miles Davis, he actually didn't write a lot of the songs. He basically got the people together and had them create something out of nowhere. And that's one of his geniuses. So the way you'll be getting paid from this is basically from a bunch of different sources, from live shows, from people buying your merchandise, and having people listen to or buying your music. And with a lot of this stuff, it's sort of contingent on basically how many people like your music and want to consume your music and whatever you put out. And given this, what I would recommend is getting heavy on social media. And I know like social media is not the most fun thing to do as a musician. I was definitely super hesitant at it, and like it wasn't until years after I started making money making music that I started pursuing social media and being like, dang, I wish I would have started this earlier. But like basically it's a way to reach more people. You know, think about like if you pack a room with 20 people, that's like a decent sized room if it's a small room, and like that 20 people is kind of a lot. But it's like not too hard to get 20 views on a YouTube video, and you see people with like 1 million or 2 million subscribers getting hundreds of thousands of views on each video. So social media is basically just a free marketing tool to advertise your music and kind of show what it's about. And despite being really hesitant to this, like as I release music and I release this album, I'm seeing the numbers grow exponentially compared to the previous EP that I released. Partially, 1, because now I know how to market it a little better, and 2, because of YouTube. I didn't have a YouTube channel when I released the other one, so I didn't have anywhere to push it. But anyway, in this scenario, your pay is really dependent on how many people dig your music and want to consume whatever you're putting it out. So social media is helpful, but you don't necessarily have to do this. You can just do live shows and gigs and tours and stuff like that, but tours are a little cost prohibitive. There's sort of like a financial level that you need to get to in order to tour, because, you know, tours cost money and posting on social media is virtually free. So, I mean, you can kind of deal with it in a bunch of different ways, but yeah, there's pros and cons to every way. Anyway, then we have the sideman track, which is essentially playing in other people's groups. Now, for this, you want to get good at networking. I really hate saying that because, like, you shouldn't really network. You should just be a good person and talk to people and, like, just, like, yeah, talk to people who like music that you like and just, like, be a nice person and genuine. But basically consists of networking, finding people to play with, really. That's like really what it comes down to. This becomes easier if you play an instrument like bass or drums or even guitar and piano in some instances, but it becomes more difficult when you're like a horn player or a vocalist. But for example, Jared Yee, who plays with Adam Neely, is one exception of a saxophone player who works a lot as a sideman. This kind of thing doesn't require as much social media as being a leader because, you know, like the leader is usually the one who advertises it. But like if you have some sort of following, that's one more incentive to get hired from other people, and two, like it's a place for other band leaders to find you and be like, wow, this person makes beautiful music, I want them to make beautiful music with me. And my advice generally comes down to being like a good hang. And like if you're on tour with the group and you're spending months in like a little van or hotels or basically seeing another person every day for a few months, you're gonna want to like them as a person. So like I've talked to many people about this, and I feel the same way when I'm hiring people. I usually go for the better hangs rather than the better musicians. Honestly, for me, it really comes down to how well I like someone as a person. Like, for example, my roommate Sean is like one of my best friends, and he's in every single one of my projects. So, you know, like skill level has to be at a certain place, the music has to sound good, but really, ultimately, I think it comes a little more down to how good of a hang you are. You can go on YouTube and find an 8-year-old playing guitar a lot better than me, but I still get some gigs that the 8-year-old doesn't. You know, for a variety of reasons, but I think that's one of them.
Hello, my name is Nick, and in this video, I just said that I'm a better hang than an 8-year-old. Great content I'm delivering here.
But anyway, let's move on to number 2, which is teacher. So you can teach in a lot of different ways, and you can find a lot of work teaching, but in different kind of parts. Or I guess like different spheres of operation. I don't know. I'm just going to discuss this. So one is a grade school teacher, like elementary, middle, high school, whatever. Usually it consists of being like a band director, choir director. In my high school, we had a guitar class, so there's that too. And to be this kind of teacher, you definitely do need a degree because like you just need it to get hired. And for grade school, you definitely need a bachelor's degree and some kind of like teaching certificate. And usually if you get a music education degree, you get this. But you can also get this if you don't major in education. You can take courses on this specifically so you can get accredited, basically. This one definitely is the most steady pay, but it is the most work. Although you do get summers and winters off, so that's a plus. But it's also like a lot of outside things, like you have to grade homework and you have to do all this stuff, like winter concerts and stuff like that. It's a lot of extracurricular things that you're not necessarily getting paid for, but you are on a salary, so you're gonna have a home. Then there's also the university professor position. I worked at this one when I was a grad student at NYU, and I basically just taught undergrads who weren't majoring in music. That was one of the biggest paychecks of my life. I don't know that I'm ever gonna be seeing that kind of paycheck again, and it was great, but you do need a master's degree usually, or a doctorate degree in some cases, and it's really competitive. There's a lot of different spots. If you look at all the classes of graduating jazz studies students compared to like the jazz studies faculty, it outnumbers quite a bit, and most of them will take those jobs. So it's definitely competitive, but if, for example, if you're doing an adjunct position, you can work like 6 hours a week and still get a decent paycheck and have time to do anything else you want. It's also flexible too, like if you have a gig, you can just reschedule with the student and you can do that gig, and it's great. Hassle-free, it's like not a big deal. And you get like a pretty steady paycheck that pays pretty well. Then we have after school programs, which essentially starts around 2 or 3 p.m. and usually goes somewhat into the night, sometimes as late as like 9 p.m. or so. But basically, you're teaching a lot of kids in this scenario, and you're giving private lessons. Now, in this scenario, it doesn't pay quite as much as like if you were to get private lessons on your own, but you don't have to worry about paying rent, you don't have to worry about booking students or scheduling or anything like that, or taking money. Usually, if a student doesn't show up, you still get paid, depending on the circumstances, but that's the one thing. In my experience, it's been kind of rough to find enough hours to make this work, but it's possible. But it is definitely more flexible than grade school because you have no homework. It's after school hours, so if you wake up late, you can do that. And it's easier to reschedule lessons and like call out, basically, if you have a gig. Then there's a private lesson studio where you're basically getting all the students, and this is a freelance kind of thing. This one, although pays kind of the most because you're just pocketing all the cash, you do have to have a place for it, whether it's like another bedroom in your apartment or you have to like find a space, you have to do all the scheduling, you have to take all the money. If a student doesn't show up, they're not really obligated to give you the money unless you give them a contract. But even still, like, it's a lot more work to sue someone for not showing up to a lesson than just like losing the cash. And yeah, there's a lot of things that come with it. You also have to find the students, but yeah, it's a whole thing. It can pay a lot. You can charge basically a lot of money and keep a lot of it. But yeah, there's a lot of headaches that come with that too. And then finally, there's the online teaching method. And this can be teaching private lessons online, doing online courses, or doing YouTube. And what's cool about that is, especially with courses on YouTube, is that at some point you start to get passive income. Basically, like, you're getting money from the content you're putting out, and the content just lives there. And whenever someone buys it, you just get the money. So you do the work once, and then you profit off it for a while. For things like YouTube, you have to be consistent about it, and you're not going to get paid up front. It takes a while to get monetized. I'm still not monetized on this channel as of today, but you can get money over time, and you could maybe even get money for the rest of your life just coming in from the work that you already did. So that's pretty cool. Plus, you have all the benefits of the performer thing that I talked about earlier. So then we get into the third category, which is the composer / the writing music thing. Now, there's a few different modes of operation within this. The first one that I would say is that you can be like a composer where you write like scores and stuff like that. This can range from like string quartets or like piano trios, like piano, violin, and whatever other instrument, or like jazz ensembles. Usually it's for larger work or chamber groups. Now, this kind of gets a little blurry with the performer thing, but one thing that you can do if you're like solely a composer and you're not playing your music is you can get grants. And basically, all it is you're coming up with a really cool idea and then submitting a pitch to some kind of organization. Like Chamber Music America is one that is really popular in the jazz and classical community, and they give you money to basically write and debut your thing, sometimes even record. So that's pretty cool. It's usually a lot of money at once, but it takes a while to basically get the whole project. And sometimes a lot of the funding goes to funding the project, like paying the musicians and booking the rehearsal time and the studio time and all that stuff. For the album release concert of this album, I actually got a grant from New York City, from the City Artist Corps grant, and I had to basically just write a proposal for what the event would be and why it would benefit the community. And basically they gave me money to pay the band and put on a free concert and live stream it. And so it's a pretty cool opportunity if you're not playing like pop music or something like that. Then you have the avenue of screen scoring. This could be commercials, film, TV, etc. But basically you get a film, you put music to it. This usually requires some degree of proficiency in a DAW, a digital audio workstation, because a lot of smaller budget things don't have the budget to hire an orchestra like how John Williams did Star Wars. You usually have to create MIDI mock-ups of the thing. Sometimes they'll fund you to be able to hire musicians to record, but still a lot of the time you need MIDI to augment or arrange the thing. This is something that pays kind of well. This is also one that you have to not be super attached to your music because you're gonna have to revise it and you're gonna have to get rid of some stuff. So it requires some degree of disattachment and basically creating moods and evoking emotions in that. And basically you have to supplement the film. You have to remember that the piece of video is more important than your music, and it's going to be background. Sometimes it's going to be background to dialogue and people aren't really going to focus on that. So there's that. But it pays pretty well. Usually for this, you have to be in a city like New York or LA because, you know, it's just like where the films are being made most of the time. But it's a pretty cool career option if you ask me. And then finally, there's like beat making or sample library. And there's kind of two ways to do this. There's one on request where like an artist will be like, hey, can you like create something for me? So like, for example, in my production company, Turn Out Recordings, we get a demo, we add the instruments to it, and they pay us money and they release it. And yeah, that's it. The way I do it is that they pay up front and then they keep all of the rights, all the royalties, all that stuff. But you can also do it on like a split basis where you get a certain percentage of all the revenue that they make in the future, but they don't get paid up front. There's different ways to do it. Then there's the other option of kind of creating royalty-free music where someone can go and purchase your stuff without really paying you for anything else. They just pay the upfront cost, they never pay you royalties, you don't worry about it, and you're not doing a custom thing either. You're just creating something, posting it online, and then people are free to buy it. Some people can do this through their own website, but there's other things like Audio Jungle or Pond 5. There's a bunch of different sites you can look up. But yeah, what's cool about that is that people can purchase your stuff after you've made it, so it can create a passive income stream, which is really nice. So the fourth category is recording or production. And we can go into a few different things with this. So one, you could become a producer. Basically, your job is to take the artist's idea and fully flesh it out. You can have different roles as a producer. Sometimes a producer has multiple hats, but that's generally the gist of what they do. And for this, what I would recommend is like basically getting with other artists and like finding ways that you can improve their music and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of these have multiple hats that I'm going to talk about now. Another avenue you can go down is to be a mixing engineer. So as a mixing engineer, you step in when everything is recorded, and it's your job to make sure that all the levels are even, all the panning is even, and apply effects to the tracks. And basically just make sure all the track is just gelling really well. So it could be dealing with things like, oh, this guitar is in the way of these vocals, or like, oh, the kick drum isn't like poppy enough, I want it to be more aggressive, stuff like that. It's also adding things like reverb and just kind of making everything sound really nice. You're sweetening the sounds. Basically, it's your job to take the track from its like draft to its like big thing. You're not really playing any instruments, you're just working in the DAW. These days, you can get a lot of work online with that, which is really cool, through sites like AirGigs, Fivers, or even a company called SoundBetter. Now you can do a lot on the computer. A lot of older engineers even are solely doing it in the box, in the DAW. But yeah, then you have the mastering engineer, which basically takes the mix of the song and makes sure that all the levels are normalized, and then make sure it's like a radio ready, like volume. Basically, like, you want your song to be a certain level of loud so people aren't just like infinitely turning up their headphones and like, it's not loud enough, or the opposite, they're not like, it's too loud. And I think of mastering as kind of the icing on top of the cake. You're just kind of making sure that everything with the mix is working well. You can apply some compression, some EQ and stuff like that. But yeah, if you're doing like a larger work like an EP or album, you're making sure all of the tracks go seamlessly into each other, so like the fade ins and outs. And you're also making sure that the levels of each track are close enough to the others. So that way, like, there's not dramatic changes in volume out of nowhere, and it creates a good experience. Then finally, if you're a recording engineer, this one usually requires some kind of internship at a studio, but you can also experiment with this at home if you have the space and you have the equipment. But basically, it's your job to have the microphones up. It's to make sure that all the levels are good, the mics aren't clipping or anything like that. Like, basically just making sure that everything is nice and solid. And it's your job to capture the performance in the best way possible. And I studied with the great Kevin Killen for a semester, so I studied mixing with him, and he said the mix begins in pre-production, and you can't really have a good mix if it wasn't recorded well. So basically, having really solid sounds is a super crucial element. And then finally, we get to our fifth category, which is the social media element, or the rogue agent. So this one can be a variety of different things. As I said earlier, if you have a social media presence, it's a lot easier to make money because you have the audience and you can market your music. I hate to say the word marketing. What I really mean is basically just getting people to listen to your stuff. The idea behind this is that if you can get an audience who know, like, and trust you, then they're going to be willing to purchase whatever you're putting out, and they're going to be willing to support you. These are words that I got from Ali Abdal. He's a great productivity YouTuber. If you're into that stuff, you can check him out. And these income sources can come from a variety of different places, like, for example, YouTube's ad revenue. They give you a specific percentage of the ad revenue that they make on all of your videos. So whenever you see an ad, YouTube gets a certain amount of money from the ad company. If you're in the monetization program, the partner program or whatever, then you get a certain percentage of that. It takes a while to get there. This channel isn't even monetized yet. So there's like definitely a startup with that. Then there's something like, for example, affiliate marketing, where you put a link to a specific product, and if people buy from that product, then you take a small percentage of that. And that's also a good way to make some kind of passive income. For example, if you're doing gear demos or pedal demos, and you have the demo there and someone's like, wow, I really want to buy this pedal, you can have a link conveniently there for them so they don't have to look for it. They already know where it is, and then you get a small percentage from the company, which is like a little thank you, like, oh, thanks for getting these people here. And if your videos are just continually generating traffic and people are continually buying from those links, you get another kind of stream of passive income. And it's not really shady either, because you're not really pushing people to buy the product. You're just like, this is how it sounds in case you're curious. If you want to buy it, you can do it there. Here's a convenient way to do that. And then there's also paid promotion. And if you've seen like an Adam Neely or Ali Abdal video, usually they talk about like Skillshare, like Nebula or something like that. Basically, these companies pay them to give them a shout out in their video somewhere. And yeah, you get money up front. It's pretty cool. And then there's also like free products. And also, if you have like an idea for some kind of like business or whatever, but really just an idea, you can use YouTube or any other social media to kind of market that thing for free. It's a free marketing tool. And the way I see it is like, if you're like living your life during a day and you're like, damn, I wish they had this and this. Like, for example, I don't know, let's say you're like, oh, I really like this chocolate ice cream and I really like this like brand of soda. I wish they sold this chocolate ice cream and this soda in one convenient package. Then there's your like product. But this can also go for other things. I saw Kendrick Scott masterclass once when he said basically like, if you're in the mood to listen to a certain kind of music and you can't find that music, it's up to you to make it. It's your job, and you will create something new and unique from that. And yeah, this can get kind of like musically ambiguous. Sometimes it takes you away from music. I'm not going to discuss too much about that, but yeah, that's one way to go about that. If you have an idea for like a video series that has never been done that you think is really compelling, then there you go. That's your like thing. But anyway, that's my spiel for today. If you're ever feeling burnt out about playing music and you're really frustrated, I actually just released a video on 5 ways to deal with burnout as a musician, so you can check that out. But that's about all I have for you today on the topic of career stuff. If you need any guidance, feel free to message me as always. All the links are going to be in the description. And thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, like and subscribe because it helps me out and it helps me do the things I was talking about today. But yeah, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching to the end of the video, and I'll see you next time. Take care.